Welcome back to How to Not Play Like Wil Wheaton. This week we'll be reviewing strategy for a dice matching game based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft, Elder Sign. Unlike most of the games I've covered so far, the decisions made before the game, while have an effect, are not nearly as important as the decisions made during the game. The first decision to make is which Elder God you wish to face. The biggest difference between the gods is how long the game will take. The more Elder Signs required, the longer the game. The three easiest Elder Gods to face are Yig, Narlotep, and Yog-Sothoth. They are the easiest because you can pretty much just play around their effects, and therefore they will not cause you any harm. The two most difficult are Shub-Niggurath and Ithaquia, because their effects are pretty much impossible to play around, because it's impossible not to have any monsters, and you're almost guaranteed to use unique items or spells. The next decision to make is what investigators you wish to use. If you decide to just go the random route, you can skip this step, but it really helps to pick when you are first starting to play. Now, while the game mentions that it can be played with 1 to 8 players, what it does not mention is that the difficulty of the game depends on the number of players. The game is most difficult with 1 player, and levels off once you reach about 4. The low end is difficult because the pool of total stamina and sanity is so small. And once you go over 4, the extra health balances with the fact that players will not go every day, meaning you will not get to take advantage of your best abilities every single day. What I recommend is, actually, if you have less than 4 people, have 1 or more people have 2 investigators, so you bring up the total investigators count to 4. The investigators can be broken down into a couple different groups. First, there are the healers. I highly recommend having at least Vincent or Carolyn in your group. This will allow you to risk adventures that have the corresponding trait as a penalty without much worry. This will prevent you from losing characters, so you will not gain Doom tokens from this method. The next group are the double item investigators. 3 of these double one of the types of items you receive from completing quests, while the 4th lets you use clue tokens twice. This makes the clue investigator the weakest, since his power is useless if you make the first roll. But it is made up for the fact that there are almost twice as many adventures that give clue tokens than any of the other items. It is good to have at least one of these investigators, possibly 2. I recommend the Magician Drake, because spell locks are extremely powerful and make up most of the spell deck. The third group is made up of the Dice Changers. Harvey and Michael are powerful because they can remove terror emblems, which is extremely helpful for completing adventures with terror effects. Mandy is probably the best because she's a mini clue token every single day. Also, the terror effects can be countered better by an investigator in the 4th group. The last group is the miscellaneous group, the investigators that do not fit any other description. Gloria and Jenny are nice because they make it easier to get extra dice. Sister Mary, Ashcan Pete, and Amanda Sharp sound really nice, but the situation their powers work for do not come up often enough for them to be as great as they could be. Lastly, there's Kate the Scientist, who has probably the best power in the entire game. She makes difficult quests extremely easy by ignoring terror and blocking monsters from spawning, which would make quests that are very dangerous completely harmless. Now we have arrived at the most important part of the game, choosing the adventure. It is what makes the difference between winning the game and losing. Rule number 1 is mostly math. The first thing you want to do is count how many dice are required to complete a quest. When counting, you should count 1 die for every 2 investigation. For example, this first quest here has 4 symbols, but really only requires 2 dice. On the other hand, this quest here also has 4 symbols, but will probably require 7 dice to complete. It would be a bad idea to attempt this quest if you only have the 6 green dice and no clue tokens. A good rule to follow is that you generally want to have 2 to 3 more dice than necessary to complete a quest. Another important factor in choosing which quest to complete is what the rewards are. While Elder Signs are how you win the game, it is much more important to gather items early on. The quest with 2 Elder Signs as a reward may be really tempting, but it is much better to save them for near the end of the game when you have extra items to spare. You're better off completing one of these first 2 quests early on. Only when the Doom track is over halfway full do you really have to focus on getting Elder Signs as quickly as possible, because if the Elder God awakens, it is extremely unlikely you will win the game. One last factor in looking for a quest to complete is looking for midnight effects. These should always be completed before midnight if possible, definitely not left for 2 days, because their effects add up quickly. Now this does not mean the first person has to do it, because you always must remember rule number 1, and it would be a bad idea for someone to attempt these quests if they have no chance of completing them. One last thing to remember is do not be afraid to use your items. In fact, if you have items, you should probably be using at least some of them on your quest. You should definitely use any items you would be receiving as a reward for that adventure, because if you're successful, you'll get them back anyway. Well, that's all for this week. I want to hear how you beat Gnarltep with 1 Doom token left to go, or how you were eaten by the world-devouring Maw of Cthulhu in the comment section below. Please remember to share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on how not to play like Wil Wheaton.